What if a moment and encounter could change the entire course of history? What if the person who's been underestimated, dismissed, or even humiliated is actually the one who holds the keys to a greater future? Before we dive into this powerful story, hit that like button, leave a comment about your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to support more transformative tales like this one. Let's begin. Barack Obama confronts the system, one bank at a time. It was a chilly afternoon when Barack Obama, dressed in a simple suit that contrasted with the high-end luxury of the downtown Chase Bank, walked into the bank's flagship branch. No entourage, no Secret Service, just a man with a vision and determination to fix something much bigger than a transaction. The crowd inside barely noticed him as he entered, the usual hum of financial transactions filling the air. It was only when he stood in line quietly observing the scene that the eyes of a few customers started to narrow, some with judgment, others with curiosity. He was dressed in a modest, dark suit, no flashy designer labels. Barack Obama, the former president of the United States, and now just another customer in line. The tellers, caught in the hustle of daily routine, continued to process transactions without a second glance at him. But when he reached the counter to make a simple withdrawal, the tone quickly shifted. "Can I help you, sir?" The young woman at the counter. Rachel gave a forced smile. Barack's calm, composed demeanor wasn't lost on her. His easy confidence seemed to unsettle her just a bit. "I'd like to withdraw $200,000, Barack said, sliding his ID across the counter. Rachel blinked, a slight hesitation flickering in her eyes. "That's quite an amount, sir. I'll need to check with my supervisor." Behind her, two of her colleagues exchanged looks. Whispers soon followed, and their laughter, while soft, was audible to those in line. Barack had expected this. The whispers, the judgment. It was nothing new. The underestimated former president. As Rachel consulted with her supervisor, Barack's mind wandered back to his earlier days. He hadn't always been a public figure. He hadn't always been Barack Obama, the name that commanded attention in every room. He'd been that kid in the corner of the classroom, the one with the big ideas, the one who wasn't supposed to succeed. But he had. And now he had come full circle to face the very system that still clung to outdated notions of who belonged. It had been years since he left the White House, but there were still battles to fight. Not with legislation or global diplomacy this time, but here in a seemingly small interaction in a bank lobby. The systemic biases, the assumptions, and the prejudices that still lingered in places where power was held by those who had not yet come to understand true equality. The withdrawal request was simple, but it wasn't about the money. It was about a broader message. The moment of truth. After a few tense minutes, the supervisor, Mr. Thompson, appeared. He was a middle-aged man, impeccably dressed, his eyes scanning Barack from head to toe. It was evident that he didn't recognize who was standing before him. "Sir, I understand there's a situation here. A large withdrawal. We'll need to follow some protocol." Mr. Thompson said, his tone professional, but there was a slight condescension in his voice, a sense that he was talking down to Barack as though he were another unimportant customer. Barack smiled calmly, his eyes steady. "I've provided all the identification needed. I'm simply here to access my funds. There's no issue with the withdrawal." Mr. Thompson raised his eyebrows, clearly not buying into Barack's composure. "Well, it's just that it's not every day someone walks in to withdraw such an amount, and in this economy, well, we need to be cautious." Barack knew exactly what was happening. They saw a black man in a suit, a former president, asking for such a large sum, and the assumption was immediate fraud, a scam. Something wasn't right. "That's fine," Barack replied, his voice unwavering. "But I want to make one thing clear. I'm Barack Obama, former president, and I've earned every dollar in that account." Mr. Thompson's eyes widened for a moment, but the disbelief was quickly masked by a practiced neutrality. The power shift. The room grew quiet as the staff began to murmur. The words Barack Obama carried weight, perhaps too much weight. And suddenly there was a shift. Barack could feel it, the ripple of recognition spreading across the room. But before anyone could react further, a large figure entered the lobby. It was the head of security, a tall man with broad shoulders named Carl. He had been trained to de-escalate situations, but his instincts flared the moment he saw the tension in the air. He walked over briskly. "Everything okay here?" Carl's eyes flickered between Barack and the staff, sensing the disturbance. Barack remained calm. "I'm just here to withdraw my money. No problem at all." Carl looked at the staff, who were now uneasy and unsure how to proceed. They had assumed that Barack Obama was a threat because of his presence alone. But Barack was used to this. He had fought for years against assumptions against a system that wanted to place people like him in boxes they didn't belong in. Carl, sensing something was off, turned to Mr. Thompson. "Are we really doing this? Do we have any reason to deny this transaction?" Mr. Thompson hesitated, his gaze shifting uncomfortably. "Well, there's just the size of the withdrawal, Carl." And Barack interrupted, his voice clear and firm. "And the color of my skin, right?" The silence in the bank became deafening. Carl looked from Barack to Mr. Thompson and then back to the customers who were now watching intently. A few had their phones out recording, changing the system. At that moment, Barack could see it, the realization dawning on the faces around him. This wasn't just about a transaction. It was about the systemic issues that plagued places like this bank. The biases that had been ingrained into the very structure of this institution. And he was determined to change that. He turned to Carl, the head of security, who was now looking less sure of himself. "You don't need to throw me out. You don't need to get the police involved. What you need to do is look at the culture that exists here. Why is it that someone with my name, someone who served this country, is treated like I don't belong?" Carl shifted uncomfortably. The realization was hitting hard. The system had been in place for so long that no one had thought to question it. "Let me get the manager of the branch," Carl said, stepping back. Barack nodded. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm here to change the way this works. It's time to hold people accountable." Neh. A few minutes later, the branch manager, Rachel's superior, came down. She had seen the commotion from the second floor and knew something was wrong. When she walked into the lobby and saw Barack, the immediate reaction from her face was shock. She had never expected this. A former president in her bank demanding answers. "I've had enough of being underestimated," Barack said, looking her straight in the eye. "You may not know this, but I didn't come here for the money. I came to teach a lesson. You are in a place of power, and you've been abusing it. I've seen it in the way people of color are treated. I've felt it in the systems that keep them from succeeding. And I'm here to tell you that it stops now." The aftermath. The changes didn't happen overnight, but Barack had made his point. Over the next few weeks, the bank initiated an internal review, starting with its hiring practices and its treatment of minority clients. The higher-ups were nervous, but they understood. Barack had pushed for real change, not just symbolic gestures. The first step was the overhaul of customer service protocols. All staff members were required to go through diversity training and implicit bias workshops. But that was just the beginning. Barack partnered with community organizations to provide low-interest loans to underrepresented groups. He also started a mentorship program for aspiring Black entrepreneurs, pushing for real equity in an industry that had long been inaccessible. Through his leadership, the system began to shift. Barack Obama knew that the fight for equality wasn't one that would ever be won in a single moment. But moments like this, small yet powerful, could set the stage for bigger change. It started in a simple bank with a withdrawal request, but it ended with a larger transformation that rippled out across the country. Would you have stood your ground like Barack Obama, or would you have backed down? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that challenge the status quo.